Recording in progress.
And there were more wars. It's on, I think, 56, Jason, am I right?
What?
There was a war in 56.
That was good.
It was a Stewart. There was the war in the 60s, the 6-Day War. There was the Yom Kippur War. There were several wars in which the Israelis were involved. Hamas started, I believe, in the 80s. It was a group among the Shia conservative, the Shia, thank you, the Shia Muslim Brotherhood. And then there was another group called Hezbollah, which was the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood. They don't get along too well. Basically, they hate each other, putting it mildly, and have continually been at each other's throats. And of course, it doesn't help that it doesn't help that the Israeli government is sending people into the West Bank to make settlements. It just angers everyone more. And it looks like Hamas seemed to be making peace for a while, but it looks like, according to one of the arguments, that it was a front to kind of lull the Israelis into a sense of security. And they attacked on October 7th. And took us.
Okay, that's very good. 3 minutes. Okay. Okay.
So Hezbollah is Sunni and Hamas is Shia.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Okay. And it's the Shia that are okay. And in other words, getting along with the Israelis. Sunnis and the Shias have vowed to wipe Israel off the map of the earth.
Jason.
She is the Iranian Shia,
Yes.
and I don't know which of the two sects are more about jihad and killing themselves so they can go to heaven. But in the beginning, there was the British mandate, which included all the land that Israel had, West Bank did, and Jordan inherited, received. Actually, Jordan received a gift from the British crown because the king of Saudi Arabia was thrown out by his cousin, and he was a follower of the British military in the First World War, so they gave him what became Jordan. And the only reason to talk about that is that Jordan, the amount of land in Jordan is more than the amount of land that was contested, including the West Bank and all of it. I think there was never a time that the Islamic population of the Middle East welcomed Jews into either state of into what had become the state of Israel or what was the settling by Jewish Europeans in that part of the British Empire. That's all. I mean, I just wanted to say that the land distribution was affected grossly by the fact that they gained the largest portion of land in the Kingdom of Jordan to settle a debt that they had with that royal family fighting with them in the First World War. It would have made it much easier to create countries if they had that land. That having been said, I don't think that whatever the Jews do will be satisfactory for people that are adamant against outsiders, against people that non-Muslim. And it's clear that Hamas is about the destruction of the state of Israel. It's clear that the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who is the religious leader in that part of the world, in the Second World War, he spent the war with made-up Hitler, and he wanted to set up death camps in
How are we doing on time?
Okay, we got
That's
it.
all.
Okay. I will just add this. Prior to 1948, the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims lived well together. It was after 48 that they wanted to kick out the Jews. All right, go ahead.
Larry?
Yeah, just a couple, these have been pretty good descriptions, but a few highlights I think are important. The Balfour Declaration came in 1917, about a year and a week before the end of the war. Yeah. And it was basically done because the Brits felt an obligation of debt to Jewish scientists to help them overcome their inability to create explosives. In the chemistry, there's export controls that kept certain, I think it might have been nitrates. What? Okay, I think there are certain export controls kept Britain from accessing certain chemicals, and he came up with an alternative chemistry, and Balfour approached Weissman, and he said, "Well, I'm a Zionist, so if you want to pay the debt, you can support the Zionist dream." And the Balfour Declaration specified, among other things, that any such thing should happen, but it should never be at the demise or detriment of people's already in that area level. That was a part of the stipulation. And generally speaking, they did live together quite well. Although you find things if you read the Lawrence, not Lawrence of Arabia, but Lawrence in Arabia, there's a case where there was agriculturalists who were taking Zionists who were taking land from the Palestinians even before World War I started. And a lot of times they could buy land, a lot of times they just stole it because there was no good record. It's not like you had titles you're used to having. So that was one thing. I was surprised to read a book. I'm sorry, what?
Turkey, when that happened. Sorry.
I think so.
The Ottoman Empire.
We're gonna have to move on, because Ken's got some more things he wants.
Did I take 3 minutes?
No. Yeah,
Did you, he's timing, so
It was 3 minutes for the subject. Because he has an outline here,
Okay.
okay? And then
I yield my time. Apparently it's not exempt.
well, what was going on is big discussions and we want to move on so Ken can cover
I'm
the other.
sorry, I was
topic.
trying to make clarify.
Okay,
It was history, it's part of the history that I don't think you did.
I did. It goes way back to the 1800s when the Rothschilds put it all together. They planned the whole situation and,
I'll tell you some things I would class.
okay. But we'll record it if we have time. Go ahead.
Does anyone else have any quick observations on this topic before I move on to the next one?
Much of the land that the settlers that came to Europe, they purchased from absentee landlords in other parts of the Ottoman Empire that had land grants. They did. The Ottoman Empire as a kingdom gave to were their followers pieces of land oftentimes in Palestine, and the Jews came with whoever provided the money and bought that land. Straightforward transaction. That's not all the land that they utilized, but that is part of the land.
Right, go ahead.
Okay, next topic. Why is Israel losing the public relations war? And how did they lose the sympathy of the world so quickly? Anyone? Larry.
I'll take lessons.
Go ahead.
The biggest problem is the devaluation of human life. Obviously, 7th of October was a painful example of the devaluation, the lack of value what's happening in Gaza today is similarly a lack of value of human life. It'd be nice if things could happen like when we had the red line in Syria with the weapons, chemical weapons and things arrayed themselves. Such sort of Syrians let us take just about all of them out. It'd be nice if they would just march all the hostages and all the Hamas members out, and basically we'd have peace. So it's not plausible to come up with circumstances, but I would suggest that if Hamas had taken control of Tel Aviv and somehow had tunnels there, I don't think we'd see the idea of saying, oh, we're gonna have to sacrifice maybe 10-20,000 Jewish Israeli lives to put an end to this. I think there would be more creative thinking.
on the part of.
I don't know what the solution would be, but I worked with the idea on a few occasions before. I think if they snap to this, and I don't have a better solution, but the devaluation of human life is there. That's part of the problem. That's one of the things people feel, whether it's clarified.
Okay,
Good. Hamas is outsmarted the Israeli public relations. They set a trap. The Israelis stepped into the trap. They did lose people, and they are my people. But they knew that there would be blowback from what they were doing. And blowback entailed the Israelis having to do something in Gaza, where Hamas was totally prepared for an Israeli invasion. That's part one. The Israelis were outsmarted and drawn into what I consider to be this situation. The second thing is the Hamas PR people are extraordinary and excellent in selling their story. They sell their story with dead people and bleeding people and babies, but it is their story and they do sell it. If you look at any news article, you'll always get about God, somebody bleeding, some child, some extraordinary emotion. You don't really see a lot of Jewish women crying at funerals. Out with the sound of Arabs making them cry. So, and there's an undercurrent of anti-Semitism, and there has been for 2,000 years. So this just enabled all the genes to come out of the bottom. Many of the genes.
Any other thoughts as to why Israel is losing the PR war?
I thought one thing, I think there is an article out this morning, the New York Times lady who said it was that hospital that blew up and who was responsible. And that was out there right away by the news because they've got to be on the story immediately. And that was early on. I thought it turned things away. And I thought the media made a big mistake on that. But I think it was to the advantage of the people in Gaza.
And even though I think forensic proof came out that Israel did not do that, that message seemed to have not been able to
They got
break
away
through.
with it,
Hmm.
and it worked to their advantage.
Hmm.
And it was early on. I think that makes a difference. Early on, and get out there.
Hmm.
And then once something horrible that permeated through the news system, you can't retract it 4 days later and have the same effect that it had when it was put out there. And horror is horror. This is true.
Anyone else?
If
Okay.
I may,
Yes.
all the information, or at least the bulk of the information from Gaza comes from Hamas authorities. Didn't they a little bit discredit themselves in what they have done since, not even since October 7th, but even before. But somehow this information going into all the American media. It says Israeli attacking hospital. Who's attacking hospital? Is it goals of Israelis to kill babies who don't have their incubators? Or they're attacking Hamas? Doesn't Hamas has a fuel to keep these babies alive? It's not mentioned in the media. It's always start with Israeli attacking civilians. Who happen to be in front of the rockets that are shooting at Israel? Who heard about the explosions in Israel? Who had seen the places that have been completely demolished in Israel? Have you seen it in our media? That's been the answers.
Well, okay, probing further, how much of it would you do? Does everybody think that it's a PR issue? Or does it boil down to a question of anti-Semitism that's been, as Jason said, been around for a couple thousand years? Any
Well,
comments?
I have a thought. I think if you look at the perception of the world population, the majority have always felt that the Palestinians have been going through a Holocaust from the Jews who had their Holocaust. I just read some articles today and I shared it with everybody. Okay. In 1948, over 700,000 Palestinians were forced to leave their homes. Okay. And they became refugees. And the information I sent to everybody was published in Foreign Affairs on Gaza, on Israel's Vietnam War. And they go through the whole series of information. Who else gets the Foreign Affairs? I sent it today. It was issued today. And they talk about the history, the Palestinians leaving and so forth from their homes. And today, everybody's getting a perception based on what's happening that they're now opening their eyes, what's been going on. It's an apartheid. That's what's happening to the Palestinians because they have no rights in Israel and they have no freedoms. There's checkpoints. If you want to go to a hospital, an ambulance, it's a mile away, it can take as much as 3 hours to get to the checkpoints. There's documentaries on this and just do the research. Now, I love the Jews because many of my friends like Ken and so forth, I do things with, but it's the Zionism that's really the problem. And that's what people are opening their eyes to today.
So of the 750,000 Arab residents, what was mandate Palestine, half the population was chased out by the Israeli military. It was a plan, but the other half of that 750,000 were motivated by the Arab armies that were invading Israel from all sides, and they said, "Get out of the way so we can get in there and kill all the people. But don't put it all on our people." The second thing is, and I sent you an email yesterday evening, more than 750,000 Jewish people were kicked out of Arabic countries after 1948. They were evicted, their property was taken, their civil rights were abrogated, their citizenship was trampled, and they were sent away with nothing. And these came from every Arab country, starting with Egypt, where they had a population of 250,000 people, Jewish people. And it went through every Arab. So don't, I'll give you your Nakba, but you give me my.
That's fine.
My 900,000 pictures. It's a tough place to live.
And
When I had one word, the one who had been evicted, the one who had been alive.
Or
Not the
alive.
one who had been killed in this process. I talked to Moroccan Jews,
Yeah.
not everybody got alive.
well, it's a situation that is difficult to find peace for everybody. I said it's a situation that very difficult to find peace. By the way, I have on Zoom here, Tom Quinn. Tom, can you hear us okay?
Yes,
Okay, good. Do you want to add anything?
well,
Keep
I,
it.
I view this issue through the lens of energy, because I consider it basically a resource war. I think it's been driven primarily by British imperialism. And yeah,
It's,
Hold on one second, Tom. Could you hold this?
Sure.
Hold this. I'm gonna put the speaker on. Hold on one second.
battery, medium, connected to LAPCOP, DS94, GU83.
You're, good. Go ahead, do something else while we do this.
okay, any other thoughts in the interim, what we've been talking about, any brief, thoughts? I know that it's, Larry,
I think, we cannot overlook, the negative press that Netanyahu has been receiving over almost the past year. One thing after another, and that I think has resonated in the perception of the values of the Jewish state. At the same time, Netanyahu is opposed by many in Israel. But I think he really set a bad tone for this particular disaster, almost giving a few points to the terrorist attack in Gaza because of his very militant type of approach. I thought, in a way, I think he helped balance out a little bit of the Hamas negative information.
yeah, he's not a very likable character. I think a lot of
No.
people will agree, on that point. Anyone else?
Well,
Okay.
in fact, the media portrayed it about
LAPTOP,
in the
DS94, GU83. LAPTOP, DS94, GU83. Disconnected. Ready to pair. LAPTOP, DS94, GU83.
Janet, did you want to say something?
I don't know if I should.
Everybody's opinion is
Yeah,
respected.
We,
Um,
yes.
Just gonna say it, they're both people. They do things to each other and they try.
Mobile
to
device not
spin it
found. Ready to pair.
So that they come out lily white and neither side. is
LAPTOP.
lily white. Just gonna leave it at that.
Let me see if we got this working here. Hey, Tom, why don't you try and say something?
yes, I'm learning a lot listening to the participants. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Go ahead. Good.
Uh,
Go ahead
should I
now.
pick up? Should I pick up where I was? You would ask me to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Anyhow, I view this is a resource war, and I view it through the lens of British imperialism. This goes on for several centuries. And I studied a lot about oil, natural gas, energy over the years. And being from Cleveland, could be argued that the oil age began in Cleveland. That was during the Civil War, and Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, he entered into an association with, and somebody mentioned them, the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds were in about 5 different countries. They had five sons from the original Rothschilds doing banking, and the banking in the United States was the word city, National City Bank was the Rothschild Bank in Cleveland. And this brought the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds together for over 100 years. Now, the Rockefellers are not Rothschilds, except there is a female line of Rothschilds, which is part of it, which is where the Rockefellers come from. So they have been working for over 100 years to control oil worldwide, and of course, natural gas with it. And then as we approached World War I, for 20 years, the British planned a war against Germany. And by 1912, England went off coal onto oil for their battleships. And suddenly there was this interest a strong interest from part of British imperialism on having a landed aircraft carrier, as it's being said today, in the Middle East. And so this resource war is going on. But what's happening, the real concern is not what's happening in the present. As bad as it is, it's going to get far worse. Because
Thank you,
91%.
Tom.
All right, I'm done, but I'm just telling you the avenue I'm taking to understand it and present it. But go ahead, I'll move on, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, because, okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on this topic before we move on to the next one?
Why don't we go ahead, please?
All right. Okay, next topic. Israel is known for having world-class security, world-class military, world-class intelligence, and yet they were caught totally flat-footed on October 7th. Any comments as to how there could be such a massive intelligence failure and military failure on the part of one of the most respected intelligence and military, capabilities on the planet?
Let me tell you one thing. Why, when things are happening, you have to go back to history. And if you go back to history, first thing you have to know, what is the Holy Land? Take it the Holy Land. Take a look. What is this? Muslim, Christian, Jews, they were all together over there. They didn't have fighting. But what happened after World War II? What British said, okay, here this is the land for Jews, and that's what happened. But they did, this is the land. Take a look. All Palestine. There is nothing that stays like Israel. And that's what happened 1948, 47, and that's the thing that started happening. It is that's a holy land. Now it becomes this is a holy land. Everything just becomes a Judaism. So that's the big problem. And what's happening here is, I will show you the land. This is, you don't say anything that say Israel. You see that?
What does that represent? Is that like pre-1948, or is that?
What's that?
No.
Is that?
No, that's post-18,
What happened?
1960. What year? 67.
This is 1947.
1947.
1947.
Before that, it was Palestine. And after 1947, 40 years, the British, it was British ruled by British. And British, okay, does have this place in Jews, and that's okay. If they, after that, 1947, 48, if they have divided their Jews, one place, and, two double states, like Jews and Israel and Palestine and.
Okay, time's up.
West Bank or things like that. If that had happened, it had been put.
Okay, we,
I don't know, that's what I'm after that, they started fighting, all the Muslim and Jews started fighting, because they didn't have a place of their own.
I have
That's my
intelligence
point.
and military comments if you want.
all right, let's talk about the intelligence.
Let's talk about the intelligence failure and how they got caught flat-footed. Any comments, Larry?
The, I had 35 years of intelligence, some of that with some relationships with the idea that we don't need to get into, but I was struck by some things. I saw the movie Golda, late October, and there's some things that parallel. There's the, in the movie Golda, in both cases, there's overconfidence to some great extent throughout, that they had this hand. Right. In fact, you can go back and Hamas thing, they would refer to it in Israel. And Yahoo himself, I think, said, well, we have to deal with this once in a while. We have to mow the lawn. It's like being a homeowner. We got to mow the lawn. That was the phrase they used, and that would be sometimes the Hamas acts up, you got to put it down, but we've got it handled. Then plus the fence and everything, the fence that was stronger. There was a little bit of that 73 as well. One of the things that struck me was I heard from, I've shared this before, there are more conservative Jews in the military now than there have been, including on Friday night, a lot of them turned their phones off. So they were a little harder to get a hold of on Saturday morning. Now, some people would say when you're in the reserves, you have walkie-talkies, all these communications. Our reserves don't work that way. They basically would use telephone lines to call up people in a hurry at dawn, what have you. And so that was a kind of a breakdown in monitoring communications. They had this thing in Golda's time, they made reference to, and they spent a lot of money on a monitoring system. At the beginning of the Yom Kippur War, they were testing it, as it turned out, on Thursday. And they tested it very thoroughly.
Got a minute.
To see if it was working right. And then Friday, they turned it off. So on Saturday, it wasn't working. So I find these rough parallels. It stunned me. That's just a piece of it.
Okay,
Anyone else?
I have a question. Of all securities, they have the best, okay? They have on their, the border fence there, all kinds of robotic technology, including robots that can actually shoot, okay? And there's no way anyone could penetrate the fence based on the technology. They had the flying drones and everything. But why were they all pulled off, drones and all the military, and moved to the north? Okay, and Hamas has been planning this for a year. Now, I've seen some things on postings where there's no way Israel would not know after a year of planning. Their intelligence is capable of knowing everything because they know every person's identity. They have all that information. So some of the theory is, did Israel know this was going to happen, that they shut down everything and pulled the military out? Just a thought, because I've seen that posted on the.
I could speak to that, but somebody else can.
What's that?
I can speak. I don't believe that.
Hey, I'm just telling you.
Look, Israel doesn't really understand Gaza as well as it did before it pulled out. They don't have the spies they used to have before 2006. So that part of the story, that's part of your story. How well wired your understanding of Gaza, I don't think holds up. I'll give you that.
I'm just saying, they know everything. They're best intelligence in the world.
Well,
The best intelligence never knows it.
That's true. I got, just,
they couldn't see.
there's a lot of videos on that too. That theory. It's just a theory. We won't know until after all of this is over and they do an investigation.
Are you suggesting that if they knew about all this happening, that they were using this as a pretext to invade?
That was one of the suggestions. Sacrifice 1,200 people so they can take Gaza.
Tim,
You know, maybe the Israeli army was never as good as their PR was. And that we've all been taught over the years, so the Israeli army is great. You worry about who's got the PR advantage. Maybe the Israeli army had the PR advantage for all this.
That's probably right. Okay, that's it.
Jay, next question or next,
Whatever. Go ahead.
There's an element of hubris that's true. Speak of Israeli military, thought they had it all, but they had it handled, whatever being handled. It happened in '73 when they rejected the low-level information that we might be invaded. They said, well, they would never invade us. We're too strong. There's another thing. There's a thread in the news that says that the Israelis were playing up to Hamas because they didn't want to play with the Palestinian Authority. In other words, they diverted their attention and created their own story and made Hamas weaker than the actual war. Obviously, actually.
anybody else?
What if
Add
Hamas had
something
a
here?
plan? Yes,
Tony?
yes.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, this is Tom. I think that this is actually a joint US Israeli operation. And I think the key player here is the US. And we have to look at it historically very quickly. In 2014, when I was taking a Russian history class with the Russian scholar at the UD, I watched in real time and gathered info in the class and brought it up that it was with the US overthrowing a democratically elected government in Ukraine. We can argue that separately, but there was reasons for that. And then we now know through the investigative reporter Hirsch that it was the US that bombed the natural gas pipelines, hurting Germany and hurting Russia. And now we have the US sending a couple aircraft carriers down there around the Middle East and providing resources. And it is a fight to get control of the oil and the natural gas in the Middle East and to keep others out. And what's behind it all is that we're halfway through the oil production in the world. What we're heading toward is the phenomenon known as peak oil. And there's a crude awakening going on, 8 billion people, and production is going to start to be going down. We use the best oil first, just like we use the best coal first, anthracite coal. That's been used up. We're using cheaper brown coal. Same thing's happening with oil. We're using shale oil. And so there is this fight for control of the oil and to keep others from getting control of it. And it goes back right after World War II. The State Department identified, hey, the United States is 4% of the planet, yet we got to control half the resources of the planet. And if we go back a little bit further, to Cecil Rhodes, when he appointed the Rhodes Scholars were to work for the British Empire as the British Empire sought to go global and gradually absorb control of the resources of the planet. They did that after taking over South Africa. There is lots of documentation on all this. We are being moved through an agenda. And then it's the US Israel, Great Britain primarily for the West, against Russia, Ukraine, not Ukraine, China, and other countries in Asia. And that's the Belt and Road Initiative that's being led by China. All right, so we're heading toward a confrontation with oil production going down. Natural gas, most of the natural gas is there in Asia. And how is the US going to maintain full spectrum dominance
Hey,
unless,
Tom,
all right, I'm done again. Thank you.
let me ask you, how's that pertain to the intelligence that Israel had for the topic we're on?
Well, I think a lot of this is disinformation and misinformation. And it's not the key thing. I think we're missing the key thing that's driving everything. Why there is lying, why they're pretending to miss it, or we were caught by surprise, or this or that. The US needed this war. That's how I see it.
All
Looking
Okay.
at the bigger picture of oil. And so the intelligence agencies, they were originally created to serve the oil industry to go and others earlier to get intelligence in other countries. They work for the oligarchs. They don't work for the governments. We should know that by now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, all right, finishing up on this topic regarding the failure of Israeli security, any other comments on that before we move on?
May mention three events in history. Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and attack of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Absolutely.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Anybody have any thoughts as to the reason that anti-Semitism has spiked sharply recently? It's always been around, but it's spiked sharply, especially recently on college campuses in the past month or so. Or is there a deeper underlying reason? Any thoughts on that?
Something happening, some activists are stirring it up.
You think it'd be Russians or Chinese or something?
I was thinking in our country. There is a conservative resurgence of anti-Semitism. I see that.
Can you speak louder so we can hear?
There is a conservative resurgence in the country. And I see anti-Semitism, and I see anti-Semitism as part of that conservative resurgence. It's not just in the United States. The same thing is happening in Germany and in other places around the world. Conservatives seem to be winning elections. And I think that feeds into anti-Semitism. I think that helps to make it acceptable, so to speak.
Janet, the only way I might disagree with you is I think you denigrate the name conservative. I think it's more of the far right or that segment of what might be.
All right, we'll call it the far right version. The far right in many countries is in a resurgence. And I think I think it's that resurgence of fascism and the far right that is bringing about a resurgence of anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A quick thing, I heard this from a couple of Jews, American Jews, I think they're American Jews. The discussion, there's a thing capture on streaming called Jews United for Democracy and Justice, Crossroads thing going on for about 3 years. And every week they have a video length for about an hour, serious discussion. This week when David Brooks talked for an hour interview. as an example. In a couple of weeks back, after in October, probably later in October, and a couple of individuals, one was a Jewish journalist and one who was a rabbi. But some of them go outside the states for their umbrella. They were talking, and the journalist said there's a difference between Jews in America and Jews in Israel. And I didn't know this, never captured this. He said, Jews in America try hard and communicate, be reasonable with their non-Jewish friends. Jason's an example. He always brings, often, typically for years, brings up and tell you what the Palestinian side is, who just did it with the Nazis, and the alternative view with the Jews experience. He said, but in Israel, the Jews just don't give a damn. Those that are outside the other countries. And he said that, and a rabbi, I've got the names here. He immediately agreed. There is that difference. However you want to say it. They're insular, they're very communal, but they're focused internally more than they are externally to the point of view that people have and what their image is. And that is a factor that some people, and I think Jason, we talked about that before, and I may be wrong, but I had never captured that, but I've seen signs of it now that I think about it. So I think that colors things going down the way.
I'm not sure, I understand.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the relationship. between
You're
that
right.
and-
It's inappropriate. It's anti-Semitic to say that if Israel does something, American Jews are responsible. That would be anti-Semitic. Those American Jews are not Israelis. It's a difference there. And so I'm just saying that people think they find offense from what Israel does, but then they wrongly blame all Jews. That's growing. The more Israel gets coarse, defiant, there's some of that there that makes it worse.
Anybody else?
See, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia is growing. Why? Because not only this is what's happening in Israel, because it has been for a long time. And they, when Israel coming,
Speak louder, Deb. Speak louder.
okay, after this one, Palestine become part of Israel, and they wanted to have a two-state solution. It has been 75 years, and they haven't taken that. Although, the total population of Muslims in the world is far more than any other religion. And that's why we have Hezbollah, that's why we have all these people that started fighting against what is happening to Muslims. So if Palestine or Israel has become the real point for everyone, so that they can decide that yes, all the Philippine people, Palestinian people have their own place. And for us, 75 years, it was their land and they lost their land. So we have to have peace, peace, we talk about peace, 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 and peace never happened. I mean, all those billions of dollars, they send it for military. And just see how many buildings, how many houses in West Bank and Gaza have been destroyed. How many time and how many money we have to pay to build those places? It's very difficult. Life has gone, people lost their family. It's very difficult in this situation. I mean, this is the 21st century. We have to think about that. Yes, we have to have a peace for every one of us. And that's not happening.
Thank you. That's next.
Any other thoughts on that topic? I don't have any other specific topics to talk about, so I'm going to open the floor to for about 10 minutes or so. Does anybody have any other topics related to the Mideast that
Tim.
they would like to bring up, Tim,
Tim
you
has.
first.
One of the things that strikes me is, you know, you have all these discussions. And it ends up, I'm thinking if I were a peace negotiator, each side would say, it all started when he hit me back. And then it is, as a negotiator, I have to listen to these true stories from each side about the horrible things that have happened. And if that's all we keep doing, it'll never get any further. So a lot of people have certainly tried to negotiate, but it seems like it's still hard until people admit, I want to talk. I want to make some peace. Nothing will happen. So the UN's method of dealing with things in the US has been, well, let's keep just a lid on it so it doesn't get out of control and really boil over. And so it speaks to, you know, is there a stronger role for the UN in really changing the UN charter to try to deal with, you know, these kinds of situations that are seen almost impossible to
But
deal with?
the UN doesn't have any enforcement.
That's what I mean. You have to change the UN charter as to what it can do. In the meantime, we're just going to live with this constant, this lid coming off. I guess the other thing I'd say is, frankly, I think Hamas has failed in what it wanted to do because it really wanted to expand to a bigger war. They needed, if you're going to do genocide, you got to have Iran coming in with nuclear weapons or something that expect to bomb and wipe out the Jews. And Israel's going to have to do the same thing. Well, we're just trying to keep the lid on things again, is how it seems to be. It's just, you know, I hate to be in these discussions where we say, well, Israelis did this, yeah, Hamas did this, the Arabs did that. You know, we know there's a big problem. What are we going to do? Try to come to some kinds of solutions.
Do you think that I mean, what else is there but the two-state solution?
I think that would be the solution.
Yeah, but it's sort of screwy because it's the two parts aren't connected together. So how are you going to connect them together?
Like Alaska. We gotta take land from Canada.
You mean like Greenland and
You know, that's a good point. Never thought of.
Greenland and,
Denmark.
Yeah, some of the times that works, but I think Alaska is not a good example.
They can move all the people in Gaza to the West Bank and all the Jews in the West Bank to Gaza. Would that work?
it would make a success out of it.
They don't want to leave their homes.
Well, many have. The ones in Gaza already have, and the ones.
Quite a bunch that have homes now, so I guess.
I just gonna kind of throw out some thoughts for reflection about a two-state solution. And I know the idea of the two-state solution goes way back, and it seems like it has to make good sense. But given the severity of this latest incident with Gaza, would Israel be able to trust Gaza and part of the West Bank as sovereign states? Where sovereign states have their ability to decide what kind of weapons they want to have and who they get them from, unless you're going to have a refined, limited definition of sovereignty.
I saw, whether it was on MSNBC or whatever, or UN, where they would have to replace leaders in Israel and in Palestine and have freedoms for the Palestinians, create the sovereign state for the Palestinians, and have the Palestinians, when they have new leaders, focus on helping the Gazians and keep them straight instead of Israel being involved. That would be one solution.
I have a question. Who are they?
That was UN.
Oh,
Yes. There was, if you give me your email, I'll send you a lot of the information.
did you have had any say practically in what is going on or what was going on before? Was there any enforcement, anything good that they did? Either side?
Well, yeah, they continue to provide for October 7th. They were providing aid to Gaza and helping to keep that, a lid on them rather than letting it go undone. So no enforcement, no, they don't have any enforcement capability.
And who was using the aid in Gaza? Heading Hamas,
Well, some people were using it for good and some people were using it for bad. Like any situation, it's not black and white.
Quick comment, the Ian Bremmer
Yeah.
parts that I listened to, I don't know how many people have access to Jason sharing that.
Opposed to.
Okay. Well, Ian Bremmer is somebody I like to listen to, but I was impressed, and I'm not sure I totally understand. But I agree with Larry, there are lots of aspects of the two-state solution I don't understand totally, fully accept it. I can't find anything better. That's my concern. And but Ian Bremmer says, ironically, 7th of October gets us closer to two-state solution.
oh, awesome,
How so?
awesome.
I think it just brings the importance of a solution long-term more to the forefront. It's an ugly way to get there. I mean, I can show you little things that happen, big things that happen in the military. The crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And things that really, if we get caught short, the worse it gets, the more likely we are to have a better capability going forward. The flaws were already there. So I think that's what Rick Bremer's talking about. I'm not clear on it all either. I don't think we're gonna get there. It's like pure climate change.
If you got there, it struck me, and I think you're right, this is a good time to do the two-state solution. But then what that's gonna do, I think, is gonna put a lid on it until the things that Larry talks about and other things which just start to boil forward. It's like, what did we create here? But that's for our grandchildren to deal with.
Boy, they got a lot to do.
The use of the word two-state solution is something that's around. And every time it's brought up, it's like something down, kicking your can, down the streets. And you say, well, we'll solve that, but that can't be solved. But I stare at those maps and I don't think it's a reasonable person to figure out how. First of all, they have to depopulate the West Bank, at least 50% of it, take it away from very rabid settlers who are going to arm up to defend themselves. And then they're going to co-join it with, I don't know how it's going to be tied. I just think it's a lack of land, and the only big piece of land left was the Sinai Peninsula. And it's still parts that are not populated. I don't know if you can buy it or something. So I want to say that I've always felt that the greatest creation of the 20th century was the idea of the Palestinian people by Yasser Arafat. He took this disparate group of people who were members of the Ottoman Empire that occupied some land where also Jews were occupying the land, and made this concept, and he sold it to the world. He absolutely sold it. I don't think there was a Palestinian king or a Palestinian royalty or a Palestinian state or a Palestinian anything, or Yasser Arafat left Egypt and made it up.
It's all of Africa is the same story,
It's the same story.
right?
Yeah.
If you look at each country,
Yeah,
I would suggest that. You may find good reason.
you get origin stories.
What's that?
Origin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Basically, this country comes from nothing. All of a sudden, it's good. But you look there, there are a lot of things go into a country that we're there. We're in Palestine. And we're in these African.
Okay, well, I didn't say I was right. I just said.
Well, no, you raised a good question, but I'm saying, you know, it's South colonies.
You look at the land at the big map, first of all, the United Nations created that silly chopped up map in 1947. You know, the one where wherever there were Palestinian Arabs, they got a piece of land and Jews got a little piece, and there was a little strip in the middle where they were barely joined together. And of course, they didn't even agree to it. The Arabs didn't agree to that map. And they went to war with Israel because Israel wanted 25% of the land mass, and they tried to destroy them. And 600,000 Israelis stood their ground against millions of Arab military. So I think the UN is not exactly a good faith meddler. And I don't think they have the ability to execute tough decisions. Soft decisions, maybe, but tough decisions.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that about Eric. My feeling is he lost his chance to go down in history, you know, by not coming to some agreement. I mean, he could have been a great person remembered, but instead, we all know he's a, don't think of him as a terrorist.
So Larry, what's the
What's the
famous
guy
phrase?
who-
Palestinians never miss an opportunity.
Yes. I
Yeah.
heard that, yes, I heard that.
Larry's reminded me many times.
Che Guevara,
Yeah.
he didn't want to be a great leader. I mean, he had to be stole $1 million, so it's not a characteristic.
So if a two-state solution is not practical either because of land or politics, well, the shortage of land, is there a solution, or is it just gonna be a continuation of what we have now?
So how about making it a three-state solution?
So how would you do that?
West Bank and Gaza and Israel. So, and you don't worry about putting together. Or you do a four-state solution using Jason's idea that they gave all that land to Jordan. So let's punish Jordan.
Yeah.
And move it in where there's a lot more land if we have to do something decisive. All right, let's do that and move somebody over there, whoever it is. But I mean, it seems to me you're not gonna solve this in some peaceful way that everybody is happy.
Yeah.
What you need is China, Russia, and the United States, maybe along with Britain, to say, this is what we're gonna do. And it's gonna piss people off, but maybe it'll keep us going for another 20 or 30 years.
The biggest problem is it's outside. We are going to decide.
It has to be, yeah.
It sure is how ain't gonna be the outsiders.
2014, I went to Italy, and our group invited two hackers, one Jew and one Muslim. They both lived in Jerusalem and they came here, in our there, and they spent 2 hours talking. Both of them, they have lost their family, Muslim and Jew. They have lost them. But what they were talking about, they were talking about peace. Can you believe it? One Muslim and one Jew, and they came and they talked about peace, how to make a peace, how to live together. So the people living over there, they have their own intelligence. It's not outside, it's not the United States or China or Russia when I do this one, because they have their own interests. The people living there, they have real peace. They know what the peace is all about. We were talking about that when after you finish the meeting, you know what happened? Israel had given something like 250 Jews to the West Bank. Can you believe it? And the people living in the West Bank, they are so pissed off. What they're doing this one? They give us this land to give ourselves, and they're blaming Jews over there. That's very painful. And that's somebody there have to have the solution themselves. It's not outside.
Jordan has 2 billion. They're not looking to increase the Palestinian minority.
No, you have to force it on.
Yeah, how many Syrians do they have?
What?
How many Syrians do they
They have a lot, those probably do.
It's more important how many guns they have, how many planes that they have.
There are hundreds of thousands of them in Lebanon, Palestinians, and there's also over 1 million Syrians in Lebanon. That's a small country. So they need to find a way to, that, I think that was correct. Let them solve their own issues, their own problems. When we get involved,
Hamas hasn't had an election since 2007, and Israel keeps voting at Yahoo. Those are the people supposedly having their say. I don't think those are pretty good.
that I don't understand.
Well, some people say Trump will be the next president. I don't understand that.
I don't either.
And the one thing you can say about Netanyahu is a fantastic liar, cheat, but he's an incredible manipulator and putting together coalitions.
Yes.
He doesn't care what the coalition is made of. He only cares that he leads the coalition.
Okay, we got about 13 more minutes. We're gonna wrap up. Any final thoughts, comments, or anything else that you want to bring up that we have just discussed already?
I'm just going to make an observation. It's my understanding that before we had this Hamas incident, that about 20,000 Palestinians were working daily inside Israel. And I kind of would suspect that number might have even increased. And perhaps that might even be a reason for why Israel, from a intelligence standpoint, did not consider Gaza to be that big of a threat, because it maybe looked like things were going pretty good. We're getting along with the Gazans, and if one could get rid of these blasted terrorist groups leading countries, possibly Israelis and Palestinians, I think, could get along together. I've only had a short trip to Israel, but going into Bethlehem, you have Palestinians getting along with a lot of tourists, a lot of people, and I think Jews coming in there as well. So it can happen some places.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
May I mention 20% of Arabs who are Israeli citizens?
20% of the Israeli population here?
Do they have the right to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they're citizens, full citizens. There are people who are not citizens there.
Okay, next.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'll say something.
Tom, go ahead, a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like the participants to look toward the future and see what's coming. And what I see coming, because I follow energy production declines, or in an era now known as post-peak oil, we're going to have to reduce consumption. And there's a new fancy word out there now called polycrisis, all right, which are the wars, the pandemics. The World Health Organization is trying to get command over to be able to order what goes into your arms. And they're heading toward voting on that. There's also this climate change, along with digitalization of our money, CDDC, and these are all related, including these wars that we got going, and trying to understand where this is headed toward. And the United Nations has something called Agenda 2030. And there's like 17 different sections of it. And if you look at it, you see where we're heading. We're heading toward drastic drops in consumption of oil and natural gas. They're going to have no choice with 8 billion people on the planet. They've been keeping Africa from industrializing. Saves a lot of energy, doesn't it? Unless you can exploit them. And what is going to happen eventually is going to be economic collapse based on our present system. And you notice the debt that we're in, and we're not going to have the energy that's going to be needed for the economic growth that we've had in the past. And this is all part of the issue and part of the resource war that's now kicking off to a new stage. That's it. Thank you, Tom.
Uh, all right, very good. All right.
What are you gonna do with this recording? You just record it
I'm going to share it with everybody. It's on Zoom.
with
Everybody, yeah.
mailing list?
I have an offer.
If it comes out good, sometimes it does.
I mentioned this group, Jews United for Democracy and Justice. Monday night, they have Dennis Ross being interviewed. If you know Dennis Ross.
No.
He's an American Jew who's been involved with all this stuff since the Clinton administration. Well, not the last Trump administration, but he's got like a 30-year experience going through all this. I find him a very balanced, thorough, and honest. Very good. I will share it with you. I'll send it out to the email I have, and if there are holes in that, maybe extensive. If you want to register a witness, that will start at 8 o'clock our time. If you done it, if you don't want to hear it, we don't have to ignore it. I'm going to put it out to everybody. I think the address is like that. Some people do it, some. Okay, so I'm good. Yes, all right.
Yeah, he's the gold standard on the failure. Because that would be right there. That's supposed to.
But it's again, Dennis Ross, R-O-S-S.
Anybody else? Do you want it, Ken? You want to say you or Kathy?
We'll have much more background.
Well, based on what you learned,
I'm sorry?
based on what you learned today, anything you want to add?
No, I guess, the conclusion, I'm disturbed every day by what's going on. So, and I wish there was something that we could do. I don't know, given human nature. Animals fight to the death over a piece of meat. Human beings fight to the death over intangible things. And maybe the worst of that is the feeling that you have no power. And as soon as that happens, that's one of the kind of physical things going on in each other. And human beings being what they are, I don't think any of us really wants to give up any territory or really or any power.
Thank you. Kathy?
And I think we would fight to the death.
Yeah. So I see where you're getting at. Yes. Kathy?
I've become enlightened by your comments, and my simplistic view on this is it's a family feud. It goes back to Abraham, and it's all spread and branched out to what we have today. And I can't solve it. I think there's wonderful ideas about what to do, but I can be open to understanding both sides. And I'm not, the terrorist part is horrible that I don't understand, but I do respect people's religious backgrounds
And I think that that's what I can do as an individual, just to be open, learn. And thank you for teaching me so much.
Deb, real quick.
We are sitting here and talking about Palestinians issues and Jews issues. But you know what the American Indians say is, put your faith in somebody else's shoe and find out where it hurts. So that's what is supposed to be here. They're sitting there, talk. It's in reality, how people are suffering is very different to imagine. That's my point of view.
I too came out of what you did, and it's been very interesting. I'm disturbed about what's happening on the college campuses that is starting to turn to violence. And that should be uncalled for.
There should be no violence.
Where's that good?
Janet?
There's somebody like, it's like.
What was the last?
And
Janice? Mary? Right.
I think the basic problem is Israel has said they want to destroy Hamas. Hamas has said they want to destroy Israel. Until those mindsets are changed, nothing's going to get better. China, Russia, US, how much power do we really have? And the civilians, children, people in hospitals who are suffering and dying because of this, I think is immoral. But until those two adversaries decide we do need to sit down and talk and work out something, 2 states, 3, 4, but something to make it stop.
Thank you. Nancy?
I'm not even trying to follow. You're sending out so many articles. I'm not even trying to follow all of it. I do believe Israel has a right to exist, and primarily because the rest of us there's been anti-Semitism forever. I mean, they need a safe place that ought to fix things.
Tim?
Yes.
Jason?
Yeah.
Wrap up.
I
Wrap
just want
up.
to ask rhetorically, if anybody gained knowledge or opinions from listening to everybody else speak to them. That's just it.
Yeah, I got stuff from you about Arafat. I didn't realize he's there.
I got stuff from you with intelligence, 9/11. Never thought of that because nobody knew it was coming.
There is one thing that comes back that all of it always takes the history. I'm sure that this is not unlike hundreds of circumstances in recorded history where people have had disagreements, killed each other, and the process of change the way human beings behave. But this is unfortunate. A lot of other things that have gone on.
I'm going to make a very unpleasant wish. How much of the population in Northern and Southern America nowadays lives on occupied land?
Yes, well,
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. I haven't really studied the United Nations resolution, but from what I understand in a superficial sense, there will be humanitarian causes as the fighting goes on for Israel to track down Hamas. Is that
Yes.
understanding of the group? So the war goes on.
4 hours a day, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the destruction of Hamas were the goal, but it won't happen.
Yes, thanks.
You still have Al Qaeda in the world. You still have, but ISIS in the world. Crying out loud in Germany, you still have neo-Nazis. So it's, the evil never dies, it never goes away. It can be diminished. Managed to a point that it can be managed perhaps, but the evil will always be with us.
Right.
Two observations. Number one, there hasn't been an election in Gaza in since 2006, 17 years. And Netanyahu he seems to somehow stick around, forever. And as long as he's in power, as long as he's in control of things in Israel, as long as Hamas is in control of things in the West Bank, in that area, nothing's ever going to be solved. The leadership has to change. And the other point I was going to make was something you started to say. I'm sure I'm fine. You just said
What I just said about Hamas.
Yeah.
That you can diminish them, but you can never destroy them.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is an extension of that. You could kill them all, but the kids in the street now over there are going to turn into the next generation of Hamas, and you can kill them all, but you can't kill a movement, and then you can't kill an idea.
I like to reiterate what Deb said about the put yourself in the other person's shoes, whether you're Jew or Palestinian. You have the same goals, you have the same desires. That's to protect your family, to love your children. They're no different than each other. So what they need to do is get rid of all the politicians. You'll see them all living happily ever after. Anybody else? I thought it was very interesting. We're 2 minutes over. I just want to mention, I ordered the books, and if you have a check for me, I'll be happy to take it. And I have Larry's paid, Mary Ann's paid, Tim's paid, Larry Orcott's paid, Valerie's paid. Anybody else paid that?
No, but I'm going to.
Oh, Brenda, you paid, right?
Yes.
Okay, I knew there was. I remember opening up your envelope.
Like Schwab's paid.
Yeah, I have him paid, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
the preparation
Yeah.
and organization. It was a good. I did.
We actually worked together on this. And he's a Jew and I'm an Arab. And we're friends. I have, my wife and I stood up for our Jewish friends when they got married. We're their best. Let me tell you, I love Jews. There are so many good Jews. It's the Zionist movement that most people don't like. Okay, because we're all Semites. We are.
I know, Tony, are we having next meeting? Is there a next?
Yeah, we're planning on skipping December, but having it in January.
It's what, the second
Friday. Is that okay with everyone?
Will we have the books by that time?
Probably in February.
Okay, so what's the topic?
We don't know. That's what I was going to ask. Now I have the movie that put on by Jews and Palestinians on how they were in Israel trying to how they worked together. I think somebody gave it to
I
me.
think I was involved.
What was the name of that?
I don't remember, but it was yeah.
It was a really good. It was a real documentary on how they tried to get together. It was real difficult. They had Palestinian prisoners working with IDF people who retired and trying to get together how they really worked to trying to resolve the issues there. And they were making headway. That was how many years ago? About 7 years ago?
Yeah.
About 7 years ago. we can show that. Or we can come up with a different topic.
We'll leave it up to you. How about that to come up with a topic?
I can pull one of our books. Oh, was there any chapter from this previous book that we had that we would like to go over? There were 8 different topics in there.
A lot of them seem to tie into like, China seems to be the underlying theme.
Yeah.
For, so many of them.
And China big now, We'll come up with something. You want to help me with it?
And a diplomacy.
Oh.
And a diplomacy.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That was in today's paper. There was an article in the Dayton Daily News here.
That's right. Who do I make the check out to?
And me, Tony Massey, yes. Oh, this article, anybody see it? It was in Dayton Daily News Sunday paper. Either or false, narratives about Israel must be rejected by all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right here. It's in Dayton Sunday paper. Here. It's quite, yeah. It's quite good. Pass it around. Anybody want to take photos of it?
Is the cost of the book $35?
Yes.
Yes, cash.
Okay. Oh, that's fine.
Is it a-
Okay. Is this for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not even sure what it's going, or you might want to get one.
I already ordered one.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. I need a pen. I got a pen right here. I got a pen right here.
Yeah. Word for word.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you.
Yeah,
today.
no, I've missed
Well-
some, but I knew I'd be late today, but I wanted to.
Well, I hope you.
Tony, good job today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for, getting the focus and everything.
Victoria, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
When the video comes.
See you Monday.
Whatever. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, thank you. It's a good show. It wasn't long enough actually, but it was.
May I ask a question after that? So you said you really don't like the Zionist movement.
Yeah. So,
So where are you supposed to live? It's not in town.
Yes, so it's already.
So maybe I don't understand the definition of Zionism, but as I understood, the base of it is
I'll bring it the next.
Jew supposed to live. And is-
Y'all know what? I should have.
Am I wrong about that?
I'm walking inside the building. I started by Christian too. I read it, interesting book. There's a history. Are you familiar with all the color?
Yeah.
Sure. There's about.
Well, not familiar.
Well,
But can you give me a short version? So
four generations.
I think it's the. Hey, Tom? Tom?
The
Hey, Tom?
patriarch.
Yeah.
He's still on here. I'm gonna end it.